Welcome back, friends. Welcome back. Now I want you to get comfortable. Get a hot beverage. Dim the lamps and get your best blanket. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. And allow yourself to drift back through time. The year is 1888, and somewhere in Europe, a train whistles through the night, carrying you toward a harbor you've never seen, toward a ship that will carry you across an ocean you can barely imagine, toward a country called America that exists, for now, only in whispered stories and fading photographs. Close your eyes and feel the wooden bench beneath you, hard and unforgiving. The third-class carriage rocks gently as the train moves through the darkness. Outside the window, the countryside passes like a shadow play. Fields you've known since childhood, villages where your ancestors were born and buried, stone churches with bells that marked every Sunday of your life. All of it is sliding away now, receding into memory, into the past. You are leaving everything you know, everything you have ever known, for uncertainty, but also for opportunities. But before we start, I want to ask you something. I would love to know where you are listening from. What part of the world are you in right now? I am in absolute awe every time I realize that someone on the other side of the world are tuning in and listening to my stories. So please tell me in the comments below where you are from and how you found my channel. I really want to know. And if you haven't already, please leave a like and perhaps even consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out and keeps me going, keeps me creating more videos like this one, but only if you really want to, of course. Well, I think that's enough of me talking. Let's get started with the story. So settle in, get comfortable, and as soon as you are ready, we can start with the first chapter. Part 1. Leaving home. The decision did not come easily. For months, perhaps years, you've watched your village empty, one family at a time. You've read the letters that arrived from America, passed from hand to hand until the paper grew soft and thin. Your cousin wrote about factories where you could earn more in a week than you make in a month here. Your neighbor's son sent money home, actual money, American dollars that gleamed like promises. But it wasn't just hope that pushed you toward this moment. It was hunger. It was the landlord raising the rent again. It was the potato blight that came back, or the factory in town that closed, or the way your children looked at you with hollow eyes when there wasn't enough bread. It was the knowledge that staying meant watching your family slowly diminish, generation by generation, until there was nothing left but stones and stories. You remember the night you told your mother you were leaving? She said nothing at first, just continued kneading the dough for tomorrow's bread. Her hands moving in the rhythm she'd learned from her mother, who learned it from hers. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but you saw her hands trembling. "Go," she said. "Go and be well. Send for us when you can. You won't see her again." Some part of you knows this, even as you promised to return, even as you memorized every line of her face in the lamplight. The old rarely make the journey. They stay behind with the stones and the stories, becoming memories for those who leave. The trunk at your feet contains everything you're taking to America. It's smaller than you thought it would be, a single wooden chest bound with leather straps, containing one change of clothes, a photograph of your family wrapped in cloth, your father's prayer book, a small bag of seeds from your garden, and a loaf of dark bread your mother baked this morning. The bread still smells faintly of her kitchen, of the oven she fired before dawn, of home. Around you in the carriage, other passengers sit in similar silence. A young woman clutches a baby who sleeps despite the noise and motion. An older man, perhaps 60, stares out the window with eyes that see only the past. Two brothers argue quietly in Polish about something, money, perhaps, or which of them will find work first. The carriage smells of wool and sweat, of coal smoke and anxiety, of lives compressed into trunks and bundles. The train carries you north, toward Hamburg, or perhaps to Bremen, or maybe south, toward Naples. The port cities have become gathering places, way stations where Europe collects its restless and hopeful before sending them across the Atlantic. You've never seen the ocean. You've never seen a city larger than the market town 3 hours from your village. Everything ahead is unknown, and everything behind is dissolving like morning fog. You doze as the train rocks through the night. In your half-sleep, you dream of the farm you'll never work again, the path through the woods where you gathered mushrooms, the creek where you learned to swim. You dream of your father's voice teaching you the prayers, your sister's laugh, the taste of your mother's soup on Christmas Eve. All of it is already becoming distant, softened by time and motion, preserved like flowers, pressed between the pages of a book you'll never open again. When you wake, it's dawn, and the train is slowing. Through the window, you see the city emerging from the mist, a sprawl of buildings and smokestacks, church spires and industrial cranes, a confusion of streets and bridges and boats. The harbor lies beyond, and beyond that, the sea. You gather your trunk and step down onto the platform. The air here smells different. Salt and coal and something indefinable. A scent of elsewhere, of possibility and danger mixed together. The station is crowded with hundreds of people, maybe thousands, all moving with the same purposeful uncertainty. Most of them, you realize, are going the same place you are. They're all leaving. They're all going to America. A man with a clipboard approaches, speaking German with an accent you don't quite recognize. He's checking papers, directing people toward different lines. You show him your ticket. You sold your cow to buy it in your neighbor's field, the one your grandfather cleared by hand, and he points you toward a group gathering near the harbor gate. The ship leaves tomorrow, he says. You'll sleep in the hostel tonight. Stay together. Don't wander. There are thieves. The hostel is a large wooden building near the docks, filled with rows of narrow beds. You claim one and sit, waiting. Around you, people speak in a dozen languages: Italian, Yiddish, Swedish, Hungarian, Greek. Some are praying. Some are singing quietly. Some are simply staring at nothing, lost in their own thoughts about what they're leaving and what they're seeking. That night, you barely sleep. The bed is hard, and the building is full of sounds: crying babies, coughing men, whispered conversations, footsteps. Outside, you can hear the harbor, ships groaning against their moorings, water lapping against stone, the distant clang of bells. The ocean is out there, vast and dark and waiting. You think about your mother's hands in the dough. You think about the path through the woods. You think about everything you're carrying in memory now, because memory is all you have left. Tomorrow, you board the ship. Part 2. The voyage. The ship is larger than anything you've ever seen. It rises from the harbor like a floating city, black steel sides streaked with rust, smokestacks towering above the deck, a mass of ropes and chains and complexity that seems almost alive. The name painted on the hull means nothing to you. Some English or German word that you can't read, but you know what it represents. This ship is the bridge between your old life and your new one. This ship is your future, for better or worse. The boarding process takes hours. You wait in line with hundreds of others, shuffling forward, step by step, your trunk growing heavier with each passing minute. Officials check papers. Medical inspectors look briefly at your eyes and throat. Someone stamps something. Someone else waves you forward. Finally, you climb the gangway, your feet hollow on the metal, and step onto the deck. The ship smells of coal and oil, of bilge water and rust. Steam hisses from somewhere below. Sailors shout to each other in English, securing cargo, coiling ropes. A whistle blows, sharp and urgent. You're directed down a steep stairway, then another, descending into the belly of the ship, away from sunlight and fresh air, down into steerage. The steerage compartment is a long, low-ceilinged space, lined with metal bunks stacked 3 high. The ceiling is crisscrossed with pipes and beams. Small portholes let in weak circles of light, but mostly the space is lit by flickering electric bulbs that cast everything in harsh, yellow light. The air is already stale, thick with the smell of too many people in too little space. You find an unclaimed bunk, a middle one, which is better than the bottom where you'll get stepped on, but worse than the top where at least there's a bit more air. The mattress is thin canvas stuffed with something that crackles and shifts. There's a single folded blanket, rough wool that smells of disinfectant. This will be your home for the next 2 weeks, perhaps 3 if the weather is bad. All around you, families are settling in, claiming bunks, arranging their few possessions. Children are crying, overwhelmed by the strangeness and the noise. An old woman nearby is praying in Russian, her voice a steady murmur. 2 young men are arguing about who gets which bunk. Someone is already being sick in a corner, though the ship hasn't even left port yet. You stow your trunk beneath your bunk and sit, testing the mattress. It's hard, and the metal frame creaks ominously. From here you can see the porthole, a small circle of light showing a slice of harbor, of other ships, of sky. You watch that circle of light and try to breathe slowly. Try not to think about the fact that you're about to spend weeks trapped in this metal cave, floating on water that could swallow you whole. The ship's horn sounds, deep and resonant, vibrating through the hull and into your bones. The deck shudders. The engines, somewhere far below, begin their rhythm, a massive, mechanical heartbeat that will become the soundtrack of your journey. Slowly, so slowly, the view through the porthole begins to change. The ship is moving. You climb up to the deck one last time as the ship slides out of the harbor. The city recedes behind you, growing smaller, becoming a sketch of spires and rooflines, then a smudge on the horizon, then nothing. The last piece of Europe dissolves into the sea. That's when it truly hits you. There's no going back now. Below deck, the rhythm of steerage life begins to establish itself. The ship's routine is rigid and unforgiving. Meals are served twice a day at long tables in the dining area. Breakfast is weak tea and hard bread. Dinner is soup or stew, sometimes with a bit of meat, often without. The food is tasteless and meager, but you eat it anyway, because hunger is sharper than disappointment. The days blur together. There's nothing to do but wait, and waiting on a ship is different from waiting on land. Here, there's nowhere to walk except the narrow aisles between bunks. No privacy except the thin curtain some families hang around their spaces. No escape from the constant presence of hundreds of other people, all of them trapped in this same metal world, all of them suspended between what was and what might be. The seasickness starts on the second day. The ocean grows rough, and the ship begins to roll, a slow, sickening motion that never stops. Your stomach lurches with each swell. The smell of vomit fills the air, mixing with the existing odors of unwashed bodies and stale water. People lie in their bunks, moaning, too sick to eat, too sick to move. The portholes show nothing but gray water and grayer sky. You spend 3 days, barely able to lift your head. When you finally emerge from the worst of it, weak and hollow, you find that many others are still suffering. The steerage compartment has taken on the atmosphere of a sick ward. The air is thick and fetid. You force yourself to climb up to the deck, needing fresh air, needing to see something other than the low ceiling and the rows of bunks. On deck, the wind is sharp and cold, but it's clean. You stand at the railing and look out at the ocean, endless, empty, rolling under a vast sky. There's nothing to see but water in every direction. No land, no ships, no birds. Just waves and more waves, an infinite procession of gray-green water, each wave unique, and each wave exactly the same. The wind is sharp against your face, and you realize you're crying. You don't know exactly why. Grief for what you've left, fear of what's ahead, or simply the overwhelming strangeness of being here now, on this ship in the middle of the Atlantic, so far from everything you've ever known that it seems impossible you ever had a life before this moment. But you're not alone in your tears. Up and down the railing, other passengers stand in similar postures of grief and contemplation. A woman is sobbing into her hands. A man is praying, his lips moving silently. 2 children are pointing at the waves, their faces a mixture of wonder and worry. You're all here together, all crossing the same ocean, all carrying the same weight of leaving and hoping. Back below, you try to establish some kind of routine. You learn the rhythms of steerage life. You learn which families are friendly, which people to avoid. You learn that the water from the tank tastes of metal, but is better when you let it sit for a while. You learn to move carefully in the narrow spaces, to keep your valuables close, to ignore the constant noise. You make friends with a family from a village not far from yours, a mother and father with 3 small children. The father worked in a textile factory that closed. They're going to New York, where his brother is waiting with the promise of a job. The mother is pregnant again, though she tries to hide it, and you can see the worry in her eyes, the fear of giving birth in this place, or worse, arriving in America with a newborn and nowhere to go. The children are adapting better than the adults. They play in the aisles, inventing games, making friends across language barriers with other children. They're young enough that this journey might become, for them, just a strange interlude, a story they'll half remember about the time they lived on a ship. For you and the other adults, it's different. You know what you're leaving. You know what it costs. At night, the ship becomes quieter, but never silent. The engines throb endlessly, a rhythm you feel more than you hear. People snore and cough and murmur in their sleep. Babies cry and are shushed. Sometimes someone screams, waking from a nightmare, and you hear voices comforting them in languages you don't understand. The ship creaks and groans, the metal hull flexing with the waves, and you lie in your narrow bunk and try not to think about how far below you the ocean floor is. Try not to imagine the cold, dark water pressing against the steel that separates you from drowning. Storms come and go. During the worst of them, you're ordered to stay below. The ship pitches and rolls violently. Water leaks through somewhere, pooling on the floor. People vomit. Someone's trunk breaks loose and slides across the compartment, crashing into bunks. You cling to your bed and pray in the language of your childhood, prayers you thought you'd forgotten. Prayers that come back automatically when you're frightened. But between the storms, there are calmer days. Days when the sun breaks through the clouds and the sea turns blue instead of gray. Days when you can spend time on deck, feeling the warmth on your face, watching the waves glitter in the light. On these days, someone might play music, a fiddle or a concertina, and people gather to listen. Some of them are even dancing a little in the small spaces available, reclaiming for a moment some sense of joy, some memory of celebration. One evening, as the sun is setting, you stand at the railing with dozens of others, watching the sky turn orange and purple and gold. The ocean catches the light, turning molten for a few perfect minutes. No one speaks. You all just watch this beauty, this gift of color and light in the middle of so much gray and difficulty. When the sun finally slips below the horizon, someone starts singing, a folk song from the old country, something everyone seems to know. Other voices join in, harmony building, and for these few minutes, the ship becomes a small floating island of song in the vast ocean. These are the moments you'll remember, you think. Not the sickness or the fear, but this, the singing at sunset, the way strangers became a community in their shared journey, the way beauty persisted even in hardship. The voyage stretches on. 1 week, 2 weeks. You lose track of the days. Time becomes measured only by meals and darkness, by storms and calm. You exist in a strange suspension, neither here nor there, neither who you were nor who you'll become. And then one morning, the word spreads through steerage like electricity. Land. Someone saw land. You rush up to the deck with everyone else, pressing against the railing, straining to see. At first, there's nothing, just the usual endless ocean. But then, yes, there, on the horizon, something different. A line that isn't water, a shadow that might be shore. It's not just land. It is America. Your heart is hammering. Around you, people are laughing, crying, praying, embracing. Someone is singing. Someone else is sobbing. The children are jumping up and down, not really understanding, but caught in the excitement. The land grows slowly, resolving from shadow into shape, into substance. You can see buildings now, tall structures reaching into the sky, taller than any buildings you've ever seen. You can see ships in a harbor. You can see the city itself, massive and sprawling, impossible and real. And then, as the ship makes its slow approach, you see her. The Statue of Liberty rises from the harbor, green-gray in the morning light. her torch lifted high, her crowned head serene and massive. She's bigger than you imagined from the descriptions, bigger than seems possible for a human-made thing. She stands there like a guardian, like a promise, welcoming and implacable. You stare up at her as the ship slides past, and you feel something crack open inside you. This is America. This is the country that welcomed the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. This is the place where you're supposed to find opportunity, freedom, a future. This is the destination of all these weeks of suffering and hope. But the statue says nothing. She just stands there, eternal and silent. And you don't know yet whether her promise is real or just another story people tell themselves to make the journey bearable. The ship's horn sounds again, announcing your arrival. The engine's slow. The ship turns toward the docks of Ellis Island. Your journey across the ocean is over. Your journey into America is about to begin. Part 3. Ellis Island. The ship anchors in the harbor, but you're not allowed off yet. Instead, you wait again as officials board and inspect. First and second class passengers are processed quickly, allowed to disembark with minimal fuss. They have money, papers, connections. They're the kind of immigrants America supposedly wants. You and the other steerage passengers wait below. Hours pass. The excitement of arrival slowly transforms into anxiety. You've heard stories about Ellis Island, about the inspections, about the people who are turned away after coming all this way. You check your papers for the 100th time, making sure everything is in order, though you're not entirely sure what in order means. Finally, the word comes. Steerage passengers are to gather their belongings and prepare to transfer to a ferry that will take you to Ellis Island. You collect your trunk, check that your photograph and your father's prayer book are still there, and join the slow-moving line climbing up from the depths of the ship. The ferry ride is short, but every minute feels extended. Around you, people are silent now. The joy of arrival, tempered by the uncertainty of what comes next. The island approaches, a cluster of buildings dominated by a large red brick structure with towers and arched windows, looking more like a palace or a prison than a processing station. You disembark onto the pier and are herded into lines. There are so many of you, hundreds from your ship alone, and there are other ships unloading as well. The year is somewhere around 1907 now, and this is the peak of immigration. More than 1 million people will pass through Ellis Island this year. Right now, you're just one more number in that impossible flood. The processing begins immediately. You're directed into the main building, climbing a steep staircase. Later, you'll learn that doctors are watching you climb, looking for signs of lameness, breathlessness, any physical weakness that might make you a burden to America. But you don't know this yet. So you climb steadily, trying not to show how exhausted you are from the journey. At the top of the stairs, you enter the Great Hall. It's enormous, a vast space with vaulted ceilings, filled with rows of metal railings creating a maze of queues. The noise is overwhelming. Hundreds of voices in dozens of languages, babies crying, officials shouting instructions, boots echoing on the tile floor. The windows let in bright sunlight that makes everything somehow both clear and confusing. You're directed into one of the lines. The family you befriended on the ship is somewhere behind you. You crane your neck to see them, but the crowd is too thick. You're on your own now. The line moves slowly. You shuffle forward step by step, your trunk growing heavier, your anxiety growing with each passing minute. Around you, people are nervous, fidgeting with papers, whispering prayers. A woman behind you is crying softly. A man nearby keeps clearing his throat, over and over, a nervous habit that's getting louder as he gets closer to the inspectors. The medical inspection comes first. A doctor in a white coat looks at you briefly, then pulls down your lower eyelid, checking for trachoma, an eye disease that's one of the leading causes of deportation. His fingers are impersonal, professional. He marks something on a paper attached to your coat. No chalk mark on your clothing, which is good. Chalk marks mean they found something wrong, mean you'll be pulled out of line for further examination. But not everyone is so fortunate. You watch as doctors mark people with chalk. An H for heart problems, an L for lameness, an X for mental defects. Those marked are separated from their families, led away to other rooms for more detailed inspections. A woman screams as they take her son away for examination. She tries to follow, but an official holds her back, speaking words she doesn't understand, his face stern. You move forward, past all the doctors and commotion, and to the legal inspection. Here, an inspector sits at a tall desk, the interpreter standing beside him. They call you forward. The inspector asks questions, rapid fire, barely looking at you. What is your name? Where are you from? Do you have a job waiting? Who paid for your passage? Do you have money? Are you an anarchist? Have you ever been in prison? Do you have relatives in America? You answer as best you can, your voice shaking slightly. The interpreter translates. The inspector writes things down in a large ledger. He compares your answers to the ship's manifest, checking for inconsistencies. One wrong answer could mean rejection, could mean being sent back. You try to remember what you were told to say. Try to sound confident but not suspicious, capable but not threatening. How much money do you have? The inspector asks. You show him the few dollars you've brought. Not much, but hopefully enough to prove you won't immediately become a public charge. He counts it, notes it down. His face reveals nothing. Where will you go? You give him the address you've memorized. A cousin's place, or a friend's, or maybe just the address from a letter someone sent home. You don't actually know if you'll be welcome there. Don't know if the address is still valid. But you say it with as much confidence as you can muster. The inspector looks at you for a long moment. Then he stamps something on your papers and waves you forward. You've passed. The relief is so intense, it makes you dizzy. You've passed. You're allowed in. America has accepted you. But the process isn't quite over. You need to exchange your remaining money for American currency. You need to find out about train tickets to your final destination. You need to retrieve your trunk and navigate your way out of this building and onto the ferry that will take you to Manhattan. And not everyone is experiencing this relief. As you move toward the exit, you pass the detention rooms where people are being held for further inspection or deportation. Through the windows, you can see them, families huddled together on benches, women crying, men with their heads in their hand. Some of them will be released after more questioning. Some will be sent back, put on a ship, and return to Europe, their American dream ending before it even began. You think about the woman whose son was taken for examination. You hope he passes. Hope they're reunited. Hope she isn't experiencing the worst nightmare of this journey. To have come so far only to be separated from a child. To have to choose between staying in America without him or returning to poverty with him. But these thoughts are brief. You're exhausted, overwhelmed, moving through the final stages of processing in a daze. Finally, you're directed onto a ferry bound for Manhattan. You stand at the railing with your trunk at your feet, watching the island recede behind you, watching the city approach. The Manhattan skyline is unlike anything in your experience. Buildings rise impossibly high, 10 stories, 15, some even 20 stories tall, reaching toward the sky like man-made mountains. You've never seen anything like it. Streets you can barely glimpse from here seem to teem with people and vehicles. Smoke rises from countless chimneys. The harbor is filled with ships, cargo vessels, passenger liners, ferry boats, tugboats, a constant movement of commerce and humanity. This is New York City. This is America. This is where your new life begins. The ferry docks, and you step off onto American soil for the first time as an approved immigrant. The date stamps itself in your memory. You'll remember this moment forever. Remember the feeling of solid ground after weeks at sea. Remember the noise and smell and overwhelming presence of the city. Remember the way your legs still felt the motion of the ship, even though you were standing on pavement. Around you, people are being met by relatives, joyful reunions, embraces, tears of happiness. A man is holding a sign with a name on it, searching the crowd. A woman rushes forward, throwing her arms around children she hasn't seen in years. Families are being formed again, or formed for the first time, as men who came ahead are finally reunited with the wives and children they saved for years to bring over. But many others, like you, are alone. You have an address, but no one is meeting you. You're on your own in this massive, strange city where you don't speak the language, don't know the customs, don't understand how anything works. You clutch your trunk and look around, trying to orient yourself, trying to figure out where to go, what to do next. The noise is incredible. Horse-drawn wagons clattering on cobblestones, vendors shouting, construction somewhere pounding out a rhythm, people talking and laughing and arguing in a confusion of languages. A man approaches, speaking in your language. He says he can help you find lodging, can take you to a good place, cheap, clean. He seems friendly, helpful. Only later will you learn to be suspicious of such offers, learn that many immigrants are preyed upon in their first confused days, cheated of their money, directed to overpriced lodgings or non-existent jobs. But right now, you don't know this. Right now, you're just grateful that someone is offering help. You follow him through the streets, trying to keep track of the turns, trying to memorize landmarks so you can find your way back. Your trunk is so heavy, and you've been carrying it for so long. Your whole body aches with exhaustion. The city swallows you up, and you disappear into its crowds. Just another immigrant beginning the long, hard work of becoming an American. Part 4. Building a new life. The tenement building where you end up living is on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, though the name means nothing to you yet. It's a narrow brick structure, 6 stories tall, wedged between identical buildings on either side. The front door opens directly onto the street, and you climb narrow, dark stairs that smell of cooking and garbage and too many people. Your room, if you can call it a room, is on the 4th floor. It's tiny, barely 10 feet square, with a single small window that looks out onto a dark air shaft. The walls are thin enough that you can hear everything in the neighboring rooms. Arguments, crying, coughing, intimate sounds. There's a bed, a small table, a single chair. The toilet is down the hall, shared by everyone on the floor. There's no privacy, no quiet, no space to breathe. But it's yours. It costs more than you can really afford, but it's yours. You set down your trunk and sit on the bed, and for the first time in weeks, you're alone. You're not on a ship. You're not in a line being inspected. You're here, in America, in New York City, and now you have to figure out how to survive. The next morning you go looking for work. You've been given advice. Certain factories are hiring. Certain streets are where you might find day labor. Certain people might know of opportunities. You dress in your best clothes, which are worn and smell of the ship, no matter how many times you've tried to air them out, and you go out into the streets. The neighborhood is overwhelming. Every street is packed with people, women carrying bundles, men pushing carts, children running between legs, vendors selling things from push carts. The noise is constant. Signs are in languages you recognize and languages you don't. Yiddish, Italian, English, Polish. The smell of cooking food mixes with the smell of garbage and horse manure and smoke from countless chimneys. Everyone here is foreign. Everyone here is from somewhere else. The entire neighborhood is a collection of elsewhere, a place where the old world has been compressed and recombined into something new and chaotic. You find your way to a garment factory, one of the many that line the streets of this district. The building is a former warehouse, now subdivided into sweatshops where immigrants work long hours sewing clothing for department stores. The entrance is at the back, up a flight of stairs. Inside, rows of women sit at sewing machines, their hands moving in constant rhythm, the machines clattering like metal insects. The foreman barely looks at you. The foreman asks you if you can sew, and you lie and tell him yes. Then you start tomorrow. 6 in the morning. 50 cents a day. 50 cents. It's not much, but it's something. It's a start. You nod, trying to hide your relief. Thank you. The next day you arrive at 6 to find dozens of others already there. You're given a spot at a table with several other women, shown how to operate the machine, given a pile of fabric pieces to assemble. The work is repetitive, monotonous, requiring constant attention but no thought. Stitch after stitch, piece after piece, hour after hour. The room is hot. The windows are closed because the foreman says dust from outside will damage the fabric. The air is thick with lint and the smell of sweat. The machines are loud, making conversation impossible. You work in silence, your hands moving, your mind drifting back to home, to the farm, to work that was hard, but at least took place under the sky. At noon, you get a break. 15 minutes to eat whatever you've brought. You've brought bread and an apple. Others have bread and cheese, or potatoes, or nothing at all. Everyone eats quickly, knowing the break will end precisely on time. By evening, when the whistle finally blows, your back is aching, your fingers are sore, your eyes are strained from squinting at seams in the dim light. You collect your pay for the day and walk home through streets now lit by gas lamps and electric lights, past crowds still bustling even as darkness falls. This becomes your routine. 6 days a week, 10 or 12 hours a day, you sit at that machine and sew. Sunday is your only day off, and you spend it doing laundry, buying food, walking through the neighborhood, trying to learn your way around, going to church to hear words in a language you understand. The church becomes important. It's not just about faith. Though you still pray, still find some comfort in the familiar rituals. It's about community. The church is where you meet people from your region, where you hear news from the old country, where you can speak your language without feeling self-conscious. The priest is from a village not far from yours. He helps new immigrants navigate the city, writes letters for those who can't write, provides information about jobs and housing. Through the church, you meet other immigrants from your area. Slowly, you build a small network. These people become your family here, not related by blood, but bound by the shared experience of displacement, by the common struggle to make sense of this new world. You learn English slowly, painfully. You learn it in the streets, in the shops, from the children who pick it up so much faster than the adults. You learn the words for bread and meat and money and work. You learn how to ask for directions, how to haggle over prices, how to say I don't understand and thank you and excuse me. Some words never sound right in your mouth. Some sounds in English don't exist in your language, and no matter how many times you practice, you can't quite produce them correctly. Your accent marks you forever as foreign, but slowly, gradually, English stops being completely alien and becomes something you can navigate, if not master. The seasons change. Summer in the tenement is brutal. The heat is trapped by the buildings. The air is thick and still. The smell of garbage intensifies. There's no escape except the fire escape, where you sit in the evenings trying to catch any hint of breeze, watching the street below, listening to the sound of the city that never quite sleeps. Winter is equally harsh, but in different ways. The tenement is drafty, and fuel for heating is expensive. You wear all your clothes to bed, huddled under thin blankets, waking to frost on the inside of the window. More people get sick in winter. Coughs and fevers spread quickly in the crowded buildings. You hear ambulances in the night, coming to collect people who won't recover. You save every penny you can. Your dream is to bring over your family, or to save enough to move to a better place, or to start your own small business. But there's always something that takes the money. Rent, food, a coat for winter, medicine when you get sick, a contribution to help when someone in the community dies and money is needed for the funeral. You're living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, always on the edge of destitution. One missed day of work could mean not making rent. One serious illness could mean financial catastrophe. There's no safety net, no savings to fall back on. You're surviving, but barely. And the life you imagined in America, prosperity, opportunity, success, seems like a cruel joke. But slowly, things improve. You get better at the work, faster, more efficient. The foreman notices, and your pay increases slightly, Now you make 75 cents a day, then $1. It's still not much, but it's progress. You move to a slightly better room, one with a window that actually opens to the outside, one where you can see a slice of sky. You learn the rhythms of the neighborhood. You know which street vendors have the freshest vegetables, which baker sells day-old bread at a discount in the evenings, which shop owner will extend credit if you're short at the end of the week. You know the shortcuts through the blocks, the places to avoid after dark, the corners where men gather looking for day labor in the mornings. The neighborhood itself is constantly changing. New immigrants arrive every week, and the composition shifts. More Italians here, more Jews there. A few Irish still holding on to their territory, Greeks establishing themselves near the docks. Languages mix and overlap. You can walk down one street and hear Russian, turn a corner and hear Italian, cross another street and hear Yiddish. The children are different from the adults. The children adapt, absorb, transform. They learn English in the streets and in the public schools, and within a year or two, they speak it better than their parents ever will. They become translators for their families, intermediaries between the old world and the new. A 7-year-old child helps her mother buy groceries, explaining to the shopkeeper what she needs, translating prices, and making change. You watch these children and see the future. They're becoming American in a way you never quite will. They dress like American children, play American games, sing American songs. But at home, they still speak the old language, still eat the old foods, still listen to their parents' stories about the country they left behind. They're living in two worlds simultaneously, and somehow, they make it work. You hear about work in other industries. The factories need workers. Steel mills in Pittsburgh, meatpacking plants in Chicago, coal mines in Pennsylvania. Some immigrants move on from New York, following the promise of higher wages elsewhere. But you stay. The city has become familiar, and familiar is valuable when so much else is still strange. Time passes. A year, 2 years, 3 years. The edges of your old life become softer, less distinct. You don't think about your homeland as much as you once did. Though when you do, the longing is still sharp. You've saved enough to send money back occasionally, small amounts that seem meager to you, but mean everything to your family, still struggling on the farm. Your mother writes back. Her letters carried across the ocean by other travelers, arriving months after they were written. She tells you about the harvest, about your sister's wedding, about how the old barn finally collapsed. Her handwriting is shaky. She's getting older, and you realize with a pain that she's aging without you there to see it. You think about bringing them over, but the calculations never quite work. The passage for a family would cost hundreds of dollars. You'd need to have a larger place for them to live. You'd need to guarantee they wouldn't become public charges. The barriers seem insurmountable, and as time passes, the possibility of reunion becomes more theoretical, less real. Meanwhile, the city transforms around you. New buildings rise, taller and more modern. Electric lights become more common. The elevated trains extend their routes, connecting distant neighborhoods. The Brooklyn Bridge, that marvel of engineering, carries thousands of people every day between Manhattan and Brooklyn. The city is growing explosively, driven by immigration and industry, becoming the great metropolis it will remain for generations. You're part of that growth, though you don't think of it that way. You're just trying to survive, to make enough to eat and pay rent and save a little. But your labor, and the labor of hundreds of thousands like you, is building this city. You're sewing the clothes that stock the department stores, serving the meals in the restaurants, cleaning the offices, building the buildings, driving the wagons, loading the ships. Immigrant labor is the engine of American prosperity, though the prosperity rarely flows back to the immigrants themselves. You begin to hear words like union and strike. Workers are organizing, demanding better wages, shorter hours, safer conditions. The garment industry is particularly active. The conditions in the sweatshops are dangerous. The hours are brutal. The pay is barely enough to live on. You attend meetings held in the evenings and halls, where speakers talk about solidarity and collective bargaining. It's frightening and exhilarating at the same time. The factory owners have power. They can fire anyone who causes trouble. They can bring in new immigrants desperate enough to work for any wage. But if enough workers stand together, if enough people refuse to accept the conditions, maybe things can change. A strike is called. You join, though it terrifies you. You walk the picket line outside the factory, holding a sign, chanting slogans in broken English. The foreman comes out and threatens you. Police arrive, looking menacing. Other workers, desperate for the wages, cross the picket line, and you shout at them, calling them traitors, though you understand their desperation perfectly. The strike lasts 3 weeks. 3 weeks without pay. Your savings evaporate. You go hungry, eating only bread and water, trying to make your money last. The community helps. The church collects donations. Neighbors share what little they have. The union provides some support. But it's hard. So hard. And every day you wonder if you should give up, go back to work, accept the conditions rather than starve. But you hold out. And finally, the factory owners negotiate. The strike doesn't win everything. The hours are reduced slightly. The pay increases marginally. Some basic safety measures are promised. It's a small victory, but it's a victory nonetheless. You go back to work feeling something new. A sense of power, however limited. A belief that working people can change their conditions if they stand together. The years continue to pass. You're becoming part of the fabric of the neighborhood now. You're no longer the newest arrival, no longer the most lost and confused. You help newer immigrants, offering the kind of guidance you wish you'd had when you first arrived. You translate for someone at the market. You explain to a family fresh off the ship how to navigate the city. You pass along job information, housing tips, survival strategies. Relationships develop. There's someone you see regularly at the church. Someone whose smile makes you notice, makes you think about something other than work and survival. Slowly, carefully, a courtship develops. It's conducted in the spaces between everything else. Conversations after Mass, walks through the neighborhood on Sunday afternoons, shared meals at community gatherings. Marriage, when it comes, is a quiet affair. A simple ceremony at the church, a small gathering of friends afterward. No family from the old country. They're too far away. The journey too expensive. This is your new family now. The community you've built in this strange land. Children follow. A daughter first, then a son. They're born American, citizens by birth in a way you'll never be unless you go through the naturalization process. You hold your daughter for the first time and feel the weight of responsibility, the fierce desire to give her a better life than you've had, to spare her the hardships you've endured. But you also want her to know where she comes from. You speak to her in your language, teach her the songs you learned as a child, tell her stories about the old country. She absorbs some of it, but English is her first language. America is her home. She'll grow up belonging here in a way you never quite will, and that's both your loss and your gift to her. The neighborhood is crowded with children now. They play in the streets, dodging wagons and trolleys, inventing games from scraps and imagination. They attend the overcrowded public schools, learning to read and write and becoming American. Some are brilliant students who will go on to high school and maybe even college, lifting their families into the middle class. Others will leave school young to work, perpetuating the cycle of poverty and labor. Your own children are somewhere in between. They're smart enough, but the pressure to contribute to the family income is constant. Your son starts working part-time when he's 10, selling newspapers before school. Your daughter helps with piecework at home in the evenings, sewing buttons while you work on other garments. Child labor is common, accepted, necessary for family survival. You hate it. You hate that your children can't just be children, that they have to work and worry and contribute. But there's no choice. The arithmetic of poverty is unforgiving. Every member of the family must contribute, or the family doesn't survive. Still, there are moments of joy. Sunday dinners with friends, where everyone contributes what they can, and the table is laden with foods from the old country, dishes that taste like memory, like home. Holidays celebrated in the traditional way, keeping the customs alive even as they're slowly modified by American influences. Weddings and christenings, funerals and wakes, the rituals that mark time and bind the community together. The neighborhood changes continuously. Buildings are torn down and rebuilt. Businesses open and close. Some families move out, finding prosperity and relocating to better areas. The Bronx or Queens, or even to the suburbs, beginning to develop beyond the city limits. New immigrants pour in, filling the spaces left behind, keeping the neighborhood perpetually foreign, perpetually in transition. You grow older. The years of hard work take their toll. Your hands are arthritic from decades of sewing. Your back aches constantly. You're in your 40s now, though you feel ancient. The young person who arrived on that ship seems like someone else entirely, someone from another lifetime. But you've survived. Against all odds, despite all hardships, you've made a life here. It's not the life you imagined during those weeks at sea, not the prosperity and ease that America seemed to promise. But it's real, and it's yours, and your children will have opportunities you never had. Part 5. Dreams and Disillusionment. The promise of America was always complicated, a mix of truth and exaggeration, hope and marketing. The letters that filtered back to Europe, the ones that convinced you and millions of others to make the journey, told stories of success. People who arrived with nothing and built businesses, who found good jobs and bought houses, who sent their children to school and watched them become doctors and lawyers and teachers. These stories were true. They happened, but they were the exceptions, not the rule. And the path to success was longer and harder than anyone admitted in their letters home. You think about this often now, especially as you watch your children navigate a world that's more American than European, more future than past. Your daughter is learning typewriting at a special school, hoping to get an office job that will pay better than factory work. Your son talks about becoming a mechanic, fascinated by the automobiles that are beginning to appear on the streets. Still rare, but growing more common each year. They have ambitions that you never could have had. They speak English fluently. They understand how America works in ways you never quite will. They're reaching for a version of success that exists somewhere between your poverty and the wealth of the native-born Americans who employ you. But the prejudice is still there, still sharp. Your children come home with stories about being called names, about being told to go back where you came from by children whose own parents or grandparents arrived on similar ships just a generation or two earlier. The hierarchy of immigration is rigid. Each new wave is looked down upon by those who came before, each group struggling to prove they're more American than the latest arrivals. The newspapers are full of debates about immigration. Some politicians want to restrict it, to close the doors that allowed you in. They talk about preserving American culture, about preventing the country from being overrun by foreigners. They propose literacy tests, quota systems, ways to keep out the poor and uneducated. You read these debates in the foreign language newspapers that circulate through the neighborhood, and you feel a mix of anger and fear. Anger because you and people like you built this city, because your labor made America's industrial prosperity possible. Fear because you know how precarious your position is, how easily the door could close behind you, leaving your relatives stranded in Europe, preventing family reunification, marking you permanently as undesirable outsiders. The work continues. You're older now, and the factory prefers younger workers with better eyes and faster hands. Your hours are cut. Your pay stagnates. You supplement your income with piecework at home, sewing late into the night by lamplight, straining your eyes, pushing your body beyond what it can comfortably endure. There are accidents at the factories. You hear about them constantly. A machine that crushed someone's hand, a fire that started in a pile of fabric scraps, a worker who fainted from the heat and fell, hitting her head. The most famous tragedy occurs in 1911 at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, where 146 workers Mostly young immigrant women die in a fire because the exits were locked to prevent theft. The city mourns. There are protests and investigations, and eventually, new safety laws are passed. But you know the truth. The laws are only as good as their enforcement, and factory owners find ways around regulations, ways to maximize profit regardless of worker safety. The fundamental equation hasn't changed. Immigrant labor is cheap and replaceable, and the system is designed to benefit those who own capital, not those who sell their labor. Still, you persist. What choice do you have? Returning to Europe is not an option. You have children who are American, who belong here even if you don't quite. Going back would mean admitting defeat, abandoning the dream that sustained you through all these years of hardship. And there are small victories to celebrate. Your daughter gets the office job, and the pride you feel is overwhelming. She dresses nicely for work, takes the trolley to an office building downtown, sits at a desk and types letters for a lawyer. She makes more money than you ever did in the factory. She's moving up, becoming part of the American middle class. Your son finds work as a mechanic's apprentice. He comes home with grease under his fingernails, talking enthusiastically about engines and transmissions, about the future of transportation. He's learning a trade, developing skills that will serve him well. They're achieving what you came here for, even if you yourself never quite made it. Your struggle has made their success possible. Your years of poverty and hard work have given them a foundation, a foothold in American society that you never had. The neighborhood continues its endless transformation. The buildings are older now, more worn. Some of the energy has dissipated as families move out and new immigrants move in. The shops change hands. The faces on the street are different. You're becoming part of the old guard now, one of the immigrants who's been here long enough to remember how things used to be. You join clubs and associations organized around your region of origin. These become social networks, mutual aid societies, places where the old language and customs are preserved. You celebrate traditional holidays, organize picnics in the summer, where everyone brings food and the children play, while the adults reminisce about the places they left behind. These gatherings are bittersweet. Everyone has aged. The young people who arrived on ships are now middle-aged or elderly, worn down by decades of hard labor. You share stories, but the stories become repetitive, polished by retelling until they're more legend than memory. The old country becomes mythologized, transformed by distance and time into something better than it probably was. Some people do go back, finally able to afford the return passage. They visit the villages they left, and they come back to America confused and disappointed. The villages are smaller than they remembered, poorer, more backward. Their relatives see them as rich Americans, even though they're still struggling. They don't fit in the old country anymore, but they don't quite fit in America either. They're stuck between worlds, belonging fully to neither. You never go back. You can't afford it, and part of you doesn't want to. The place you left exists only in memory now, frozen in time on the day you departed. To return would be to confront the reality that time moved on without you, that life continued in your absence, that the world you knew has changed or disappeared. Instead, you preserve what you can. You cook the traditional foods. You teach your grandchildren. Yes, you have grandchildren now, a development that makes you feel ancient and blessed simultaneously. Words in the old language. You tell them stories about the farm, about the village, about their ancestors. They listen politely, but you can see that for them. These are just stories, fairy tales about a faraway place they'll never see. The world is changing rapidly now. It's the 1910s, and everything is accelerating. There's war in Europe, the old empires tearing themselves apart, the countries you left behind being devastated by a conflict of unprecedented scale. You read about it in the newspapers, hear about it from recent immigrants who fled just before the war made travel impossible. The war affects the neighborhood. Men are being drafted, including some immigrants who haven't yet naturalized, who are being asked to fight for a country that hasn't fully accepted them. Your son is the right age, And you live in fear of the draft notice that could send him overseas to die in the trenches. The war also brings prosperity, at least temporarily. Factories are running at full capacity, producing war materials. Wages rise. There's more work than workers to do it. For the first time in years, you're not worried about making rent, not choosing between food and fuel. But the cost is high. Young men from the neighborhood are dying in France, their names posted in the windows of their family homes, gold stars marking loss. The community mourns collectively, attending funerals for boys who left as Americans and died as soldiers, finally and fully accepted by the country that sent them to die. Your son survives the war, though he comes back changed, quieter, haunted by things he won't talk about. He returns to his mechanic's work, marries a girl from the neighborhood, a second-generation immigrant like himself, and starts his own family. You're a grandparent now, watching the cycle continue, the next generation being born into an America that's slightly more welcoming, slightly less foreign than the one you entered. Part 6. Reflection and Legacy. You're old now. The years have accumulated faster than you realized, and suddenly you're in your 60s, then your 70s, an age you never expected to reach when you were working those brutal hours in the factory. You live with your daughter and her family now, unable to work anymore, dependent on your children for support in the way your parents once depended on you. The role reversal is humbling, but your children are good to you. They've prospered modestly. They have a small house in a better neighborhood, away from the crowded tenements of your early years. There's a yard where the grandchildren play. There are trees on the street. This neighborhood is quieter, more settled. The residents are mostly second-generation immigrants, people who've climbed the economic ladder enough to afford something better than tenement living. It's still not the American dream as originally advertised. No one here is wealthy, but it's comfortable, stable, respectable. You spend your days in quiet routine. In the mornings, you sit by the window and watch the street. In the afternoons, you help where you can, simple tasks that your arthritic hands can still manage, mending clothes, preparing vegetables for dinner. In the evenings, the family gathers, and you listen to the grandchildren talk about school, about their friends, about the world they're growing up in. That world is so different from the one you entered as a young immigrant. The city has expanded dramatically. The subways now connect distant boroughs. Skyscrapers rise higher every year, defining a new kind of city skyline. More people have automobiles. Radio broadcasts bring news and entertainment into homes. The pace of change is dizzying. Your grandchildren are fully American, in a way your children never quite were. They have no accent. They've never known the old country. To them, the stories you tell are ancient history, as remote as tales of kings and castles. They're polite when you reminisce, but you can see their attention drifting. The past you remember so vividly is simply not real to them. Sometimes, other old immigrants from the neighborhood visit. You sit together and talk in the old language, grateful to have someone who understands without explanation, who shares the memories of that other life. You talk about the journey across the ocean, about those first brutal years, about people you knew who died young, or gave up, or succeeded beyond expectation. These conversations follow familiar paths. The details have been worn smooth by repetition, but the emotional truth remains. You suffered. You endured. You survived. And in surviving, you created the possibility for your children and grandchildren to have better lives. Was it worth it? The question arises sometimes in the quiet moments. You gave up so much, your homeland, your language, your culture, your family, your youth. You worked until your body gave out. You lived in poverty and fear for decades. You never achieved the prosperity that America seemed to promise. But then you look at your grandchildren, healthy and educated and confident, and the question answers itself. Yes, it was worth it. Not for what you gained, but instead what they got, what they gained, and what they will gain in the future. Your sacrifice purchased their opportunities. Your struggle built their foundation. This is the immigrant story, you realize. Not one of individual triumph, but of generational progress. The first generation suffers, so the second can struggle towards stability, so the third can reach for success. It takes time, takes generations, takes more sacrifice than anyone who hasn't lived it can truly understand. You think about the millions of others who made the same journey, who crossed the same ocean, who endured the same hardships. Some succeeded spectacularly. Some failed utterly. Most, like you, simply survived, contributing their labor to building America while receiving only modest rewards. Together, you transformed this country. The cities you built, the factories you worked in, the railroads you constructed, the garments you sewed, the food you served, the buildings you cleaned, all of it was essential to America's growth. Immigrant labor was the foundation of American prosperity, even as individual immigrants remained poor. And you changed America in other ways too. You brought your cultures, your foods, your languages, your traditions. You added complexity and diversity to the American identity. The neighborhoods you created, Little Italy, the Jewish Quarter, Greek Town, Polish Hill, became lasting parts of the urban landscape. The foods you cooked entered the American diet. The words from your languages crept into English. The churches and synagogues and temples you built still stand. America changed you too, of course. You're not the person who left Europe all those years ago. That person died somewhere on the Atlantic, or in the tenements, or in the factories. You're something new now. Something hybrid. Not fully European anymore, but not quite American either. You exist in the space between, carrying pieces of both worlds, fully at home in neither. Your grandchildren won't have that divided identity. They're simply American, and they'll probably move further from the old country with each passing generation until all that remains are family stories, recipes, perhaps a few traditional songs sung at gatherings. The culture you brought will be diluted, assimilated, transformed into something new. This makes you sad sometimes, this knowledge that what you've preserved will eventually disappear. But you also understand it's inevitable, even necessary. Each generation must find its own way, must adapt to its own times. Your grandchildren need to be American to succeed in America. They can't live in the past the way you do. Evening comes. The family gathers for dinner. Your daughter has made a traditional dish from the old country, and the smell brings tears to your eyes. It's exactly right, exactly the way you remember. But she's also made American food, and the children eat both without thinking about it, without recognizing that this meal represents the blending of two worlds. After dinner, your grandson brings out a map to show you something he learned in school. He points to the country where you were born, asking questions about it. You look at the map, at that small area of land that once contained your entire world, and you try to explain. You tell him about the village, about the farm, about the journey. He listens, his young face serious, trying to understand a life so different from his own. Were you scared? He asks. When you came to America? Yes, you tell him. I was terrified. I didn't speak English. I had no money. I didn't know anyone. Everything was strange and new and overwhelming. But you stayed, he says. But I stayed, you agree. Because there was nothing to go back to. And because I hoped for something better. Did you find it? He asks. Something better? You look at him. At this bright, healthy, confident child who will probably go to college, who will have opportunities you couldn't have imagined. Yes, you say. I found it, but not for myself. For you. He doesn't fully understand, but that's all right. Someday, he might. Someday, he might have his own children, and he'll tell them about his grandparents who came from far away, who worked hard, who made a life in a strange land. The details will be vague, simplified, perhaps wrong in places, but the essential truth will remain, that people came here hoping for better, that they suffered and endured, that they built something lasting. Part 7. The Quiet Ending. The years drift by now, gentle as falling leaves. You're very old, and time has become strange. Days pass quickly, but also slowly, each one much like the last, blurring together into a peaceful continuity. You spend more time sleeping now, drifting in and out of consciousness, and in your dreams, the past and present mix freely. You dream of the ship crossing the ocean, but when you look at the passengers, they're your grandchildren. You dream of the factory, but the machines are making something impossible, something that dissolves when you try to see it clearly. You dream of the farm where you grew up, and it's exactly as you remember, perfect and unchanging, bathed in golden light. Sometimes you wake confused, not sure where you are, not sure what year it is. Your daughter is patient with you, reorienting you gently, reminding you that you're safe, you're home, you're with family. Home, it's a complicated word now. Is home the place you were born? The place you haven't seen in 50 years? Or is home here, in this house with your daughter? In this city you've lived in longer than you lived anywhere else? You don't know anymore. Maybe home is just wherever the people who love you are. Maybe home is memory and belonging, not geography. The neighborhood where you first lived has changed completely. Your daughter took you to visit once, driving through streets you used to walk. The buildings are still there, still housing immigrants, but now they're from different countries, people from places you've never heard of, speaking languages you don't recognize. The cycle continues, the city still accepting the dispossessed and desperate, still promising more than it can deliver, still transforming lives and families and cultures. You felt like a ghost visiting that neighborhood, like you were looking at your own past from a great distance. But you did. That's what you keep coming back to. Despite everything, the poverty, the prejudice, the back-breaking labor, the loneliness, the loss, you endured. And not just endured, but created life, raised children, built community, contributed to something larger than yourself. The letters stopped coming from the old country long ago. Everyone you knew there has died. The village itself may not even exist anymore. The war changed everything, redrew borders, displaced populations. The place you left is gone, existing now only in your memory. And when you die, even that version will disappear. But new stories are being created. Your grandchildren are growing up, making their own lives, creating their own memories. They'll have their own struggles, their own triumphs, their own versions of the American dream. The story continues, chapter after chapter, generation after generation. On quiet afternoons, you sit by the window and watch the light change. The seasons cycle past. Spring's gentle renewal, summer's abundant heat, autumn's golden mellowing, winter's stark beauty. You've seen these cycles dozens of times now, and each year they seem to move faster, time accelerating as your own time grows short. You're not afraid of death. You've seen too much of it, lost too many people, lived too hard a life to fear the ending. Death seems, if anything, like rest, like the final release from a journey that's been longer and harder than you ever anticipated. What you hope for, in your quiet moments, is that you'll be remembered. Not as an individual necessarily. Your name will probably be forgotten in a generation or two, but as part of a larger story. The story of people who left everything behind to seek something better. The story of people who built a country with their hands and backs and determination. The story of immigrants, of strivers, of survivors. Your daughter sits with you often, holding your hand, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. She knows these are your final days, and she's making sure you're not alone. This attention is a gift, a return of the care you gave her when she was young, the circle of family care completing itself. Tell me about the ship, she says one afternoon. Tell me about coming to America. And you do, one more time. You tell her about the steerage compartment, about the storm, about the first sight of the Statue of Liberty. You tell her about Ellis Island, about the fear and hope mixed together. You tell her about arriving in the city, lost and alone, and determined to succeed. She's heard these stories before, many times, but she listens as if they're new. She's preserving them, you realize, committing them to memory so she can tell them to her own children, so the story can continue. so your journey is remembered. Thank you, you say to her, though you're not sure exactly what you're thanking her for. For listening, maybe. For caring. For being proof that your journey mattered, that your suffering had purpose. She squeezes your hand. Rest now, she says. You've earned your rest. And so you do. You close your eyes and drift. And in your half-sleep, you're back on the ship, feeling it rock gently beneath you. But this time, you're not afraid. This time, you know how the journey ends. You know that you'll arrive safely, that you'll survive, that you'll create a life and a family and a legacy. The ocean stretches endlessly around you, dark and deep and eternal. The ship moves steadily forward, its engines thrumming their constant rhythm. Above, stars are beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The same stars you watched from the farm as a child. The same stars that shine over America, connecting past and future in their ancient light. You are between worlds, between then and now, between sleeping and waking. The motion of the ship is soothing, rocking you gently, steadily, like a mother rocking a child. The sound of the waves is constant, eternal, the heartbeat of the journey. Somewhere ahead, though you can't see it yet, land is waiting. A new world is waiting. A future is waiting, filled with your children and grandchildren, filled with possibilities you created through your endurance. The years pass. The city grows around you. The language becomes familiar, and the old world fades like a dream. Yet somewhere deep inside, a small part of the sea still moves. The rhythm of your journey, the quiet pulse of hope that carried you across the ocean, that sustained you through hardship, that made everything possible. That rhythm continues even now, even as you drift deeper into sleep. It will continue after you're gone, carried forward in the hearts of those who come after you. The endless motion of immigrants arriving, struggling, surviving, building, hoping. You are part of that eternal rhythm now, part of the story that never ends, the story of people seeking home, seeking belonging, seeking a better life. Your particular chapter is closing, but the story continues, generation after generation, wave after wave, arriving on these shores with nothing but hope and determination, building America, one life, one family, one sacrifice at a time. Rest now. Your journey is complete. You crossed the ocean. You survived. You endured. You mattered. The ship rocks gently. The waves whisper their ancient song. The stars shine overhead, connecting everything, connecting everyone, connecting past and future in the infinite present moment. And you drift into the deepest sleep, into the final rest, into peace. Let yourself settle down now. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink into comfort. The story has been told. The journey has been made. Rest comes to all travelers eventually. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. The rhythm of the waves, the motion of time, the gentle rocking of the ship carrying you forward, always forward, into dream, into sleep, into the peace that awaits at the end of every long journey.